Are you hungry?
Give me something good.
Hi, and welcome to another episode of Görgött. Today we're making a wonderful tomato salad with fresh tomatoes and dried tomatoes, a combination. And we're also, like the cherry on the cake, we're stuffing one of the dried tomatoes with some burrata. But before we have a look at what we have here on our board, as always, please support the channel by clicking the subscribe button and checking the bell icon to get notifications when new episodes are online. And now, let's have a look at the board. Yes, tomato salad. Here are all our tomatoes. We have some different cherry tomatoes. We have some Peretti. We have some Sun Black. We have some Sardi. And we have a pineapple tomato. You don't need that many different tomatoes, but it's nicer because they all have a different taste, a different texture. And we're gonna dry these Sun Black and these Peretti. So we'll start with prepping those. But before we do that, turn your oven on. You can preheat it to 80 degrees with the fan on because they go in there afterwards. But now we'll first prep them for the boiling water there because we need to peel them. So we need to blanch them first. So let's prep those tomatoes and then into the hot water. And I got carried away. I forgot to mention the thyme. And we also have some white wine vinegar, some homemade, and some neutral oil and some salt, as well as a shallot to make the dressing. But I'll show you that later. Let's start with the tomatoes. Before we can blanch them, we do on each side a cross like that, because that will loosen the skin. Do that on both sides, on the Peretti and on the Sun Black. We're going to cut this open anyways, because these other tomatoes will fill. So it's enough to just cross them like that as well on both sides. If you don't want to fill them, I would just cross them and cut off the kind of the stem here, where the stem used to sit, because that's not so nice. So do that on these tomatoes, and then we'll pop them in the boiling water. So all our tomatoes are ready. Now before we pop them in the boiling water, I prepared a cold water bath, because they're only going to be in there for about 30 to 45 seconds, and then we need to pop them in ice cold water. Ideally you will put some ice in here to cool it down even further, but I have ice cold water, and I will get some more ice cold water from the tap once the tomatoes are in here. But now let's pop them into the boiling water. And this will not take long. Have a look at them. When the skin starts cracking, they're done. And then we'll put them into the ice cold water. They're done. So pop them into the ice cold water. And since I don't have ice in here, we'll pop it under the faucet and cool it down even further. Let them cool until you can't feel any heat anymore. Probably a minute under cold running water as well. And then I'll show you how we peel them. So you can see the skin has already started to peel off. You just need to help it a little bit with your hands. The same with the Sun Black. If it's difficult with your hands, you can just get the knife and take the back of the knife and kind of pull it. That always helps. So now peel all of your tomatoes, and then I'll show you how we prep them after that. Let's have a look at how we deal with them. Since we're stuffing these Sun Black, we need to kind of make a bigger hole in them. Be careful so that you don't cut yourself. And then we'll lift that out. And now we have to be quite careful and go around inside with your knife. Try to let the knife do the work and don't squeeze too much. Now if you don't want to do this, it tastes just as good without the burrata. So you can just keep them whole. You see, we cut out the center, and you can take a small spoon to kind of scoop out the seeds. And there we have a perfect tomato to be filled. So do that with all of your sun black. With the Peretti, I'll show you quickly as well. We just split them into quarts, and then each quart will de-seed as well, like that. So you have a nice quart without any seeds. So let's do all of these, and then I'll show you what we'll do before we put them into the oven. Yes, I know it's messy, but let's leave it for now. We have an oven tray where I put some neutral oil. Going to spread out a bit of thyme on here, some twigs, and then we will place our tomatoes. Put them all on. Spread them out so that they don't overlap. And I will take some salt. Like that. They go in there now for 2 hours. And in the meantime, we'll prep the other tomatoes, we'll prep the burrata, and we'll make the dressing. So see you in a couple of minutes when I'm ready for that, when I've cleaned up this mess. We have our other tomatoes here, the sardi, the pineapple, and the different cherry. I'm going to show you how I will cut one of each here. Obviously you can do whatever you want. I cut off the top. And for the cherry tomatoes, we just split them. For the sardi, take off the stem. And I prefer to cut this part out. You can eat it, but I don't like it very much. And we cut this into, I think we'll cut it into 8s actually. Quite nice to have it smaller. So we'll cut it into this size. And now for the big one, again, cut out the stem. And I don't like that either, so we'll cut that out. Now this is a much meatier tomato. And it's not as firm in the meat. So here we'll just cut slices. I don't want them too thick. Something like that. So now cut all your tomatoes, and then we'll make the dressing after that. A bowl full of tomatoes. Now we don't have to mix them yet. Let's get on with the dressing. So this is all we need. We have our homemade white wine vinegar. We have some neutral oil. We have our shallot, and we have our salt. I don't know if you can notice, but it got a lot darker. That's because a thunderstorm came in. So that's the Armageddon kind of mood. Well, let's start. So a normal vinaigrette is 1 part vinegar to 3 parts oil. I kind of like the sourness, so I make 1 part vinegar to 2 parts oil. I'm just using this to measure. So it's not exact, but more or less. I'll get a good pinch of salt in there. And for the shallot, I'm grating it in. Obviously you can chop it really finely, but I prefer to grate it. Then it kind of makes an emulsion with the whole dressing, and this is great. Gives a lot of nice taste. Just grate it in. It will take a while because we're grating on the finest. As you can see, it's really a pulp that you get. So just grate up your shallot. That's enough. I will take a spoon to scrape the rest of the pulp. Now it's time to mix it all up. Make an emulsion out of it. Like that. Let's give it a little try. It's very nice, but the homemade white wine vinegar does not have a lot of sweetness to it, so I'm going to add something to make it a little bit sweet. So I have this, it's maple syrup. It's really good maple syrup. Just add a little bit of that in. Maybe half a teaspoon. I'll give it another try. That's perfect. So our vinaigrette is ready as well. Now we just mix that with the tomatoes. I will just mix it straight in the bowl here. And now carefully, because some of these tomatoes are quite fragile, just kind of mix it through, make sure that everything gets a bit of the dressing. And there we are. The fresh tomatoes are ready. So we can put that to the side, and I will get on with the burrata. Now let's put our burrata into another bowl. So we're making the stuffing for the tomatoes, right? So we're going to mix this up and add a bit of salt. See if we need maybe a bit of pepper. But that's basically it. We're going to leave it quite neutral. So let's start with mixing it up. So that's about enough. Put a little bit of salt, like a proper pinch. Mix that. So let's give it a taste. Perfect. We don't want to alter the taste of the burrata, right? So we just want to lift it a bit with the salt. So it doesn't need anything else. We still want it to taste like burrata. Now, before we move on, we'll basically cut until when the tomatoes are done in the oven. If you stuck with me this far, there must have been something you enjoyed about the episode. So do me the favor, support me and make it easier for YouTube to find me by hitting that like button below. And also comment, leave a comment. Let me know what you thought of it. Now, let's cut until when the tomatoes are done. Doesn't this look beautiful? Dried tomatoes. Now, let's put them on another plate to let them cool down. Now, I turned them once at like half time, so after about an hour. Obviously, you can let them go longer if you want them even more dry. But I think it's nice to have them like this. Now we just need them to cool, and then we're ready to plate up. And before we plate up, we'll fill them. So see you once these are cold. I've collected everything we need to plate this dish up. Remember the burrata cream I made? Well, it's not really a cream, it's just burrata that's been mixed. We're going to fill our tomatoes. I just put them in a plastic bag and cut off a corner because it's easier to control like this. And now you can choose, but I prefer to put them upside down so that you don't really see that they're filled. So we have one like that in the middle, or maybe not in the middle. Let's move it a little bit. And let's fill the second one as well. Put that there. And now for our fresh tomatoes marinated, we'll just spread them out a bit. Make sure you get a good mix of the different kinds. It's good to mix through once before you serve it. I'll try to pick up some different colors. I mean, that's the beauty of using this many different ones, right? Because you get I wouldn't say a rainbow of color, but you get a nice multitude of different colors and textures and tastes. Everything from kind of bright yellow to red with a bit of green in between. And you're gonna see these have really cool different textures. I think we have quite a good mix here. And I will also put 1 or 2 of our dried peretti, or maybe 3 or 4. I think that's quite a nice plate. And to finish it off, we have some sea salt. Sprinkle a bit on top. And I picked some of the thyme that we used for the ones in the oven, for the dried ones. And we'll just spread that on top as well. I think that goes really nicely with the tomatoes. Obviously you could use basil or something like that as well. There's a Greek basil that has much smaller leaves. That will go really nice as well. But that's our final dish. Now let's taste it. Now you could also switch these around if you want to show your guests that they're filled. I think it's a nice surprise. So let's start with a bit of that. Some other tomatoes. When you dry the tomatoes a little bit like this, they really become these kind of umami bombs. They're just full of great umami flavor. As I mentioned, you could do this with one type of tomatoes, just dry some and use some fresh. But I think this play with different textures, different colors, different tastes works really well. As a bit of a surprise to your guests when they eat it. It's just a different take on a tomato salad, right? And it's nice how the shallot from the vinegar also comes through. It's not overpowering in any way, but there's just a hint of this shallot oniony flavor. Beautiful. And it's a perfect summer starter. And that burrata, it's just a little thing that kind of, I think, lifts the whole dish. You can make it without, but it is nice to have this milky, fatty, creamy part of it, because it's quite sour. Tomatoes in general are quite sour, and it works well to balance the dish out. But that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed the salad. I hope you will try it yourself. But before we go, as always, please support the channel if you're not doing so yet by clicking the subscribe button and checking the bell icon so that you get notifications. A lot of people that are watching my episodes are not subscribers, so do me that favor. Click that subscribe. But that's it. Take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.